As we were saying previously, images undeniably play a significant role in persuasion. And oftentimes, this is because images can substitute our logic and reasoning, our logos, with emotion, pathos, which, as we've learned previously, is a really powerful motivator, and images are a huge part of that. Now, images can also play into God terms and devil terms. These are usually linguistic terms that are used with persuasion, but they can be used visually as well. If we're looking at a devil term, this is a term that a culture generally regards as evil or wrong. So in the United States, devil terms include tyranny, terrorism, and fascism. God terms, on the other hand, are terms that are typically revered within a culture. So think freedom, rights, and democracy. And these devil terms and God terms can be very easily depicted by the visual. And so it's important for us to draw a line here between arguing and argumentation. If we want to make this really simple, arguing has more to do with the emotional response to an argument, whereas argumentation has more to do with the logical response that we have. And so images, it's interesting because images can be used both for arguing the more emotional side as well as for argumentation, the more logical side. So as we said before, images can be used to evoke really heavily emotional and inflammatory thoughts, but they can also be used as a form of data. Think about graphs, for example. These are heavily visual images that demonstrate data for us to better understand. In fact, some data are best illustrated through these images and through these graphs. And so images can be used to assert claims in a lot of instances. Oftentimes they do need the help of language, but they can have that effect on people. If you think about political cartoons, for example, these are highly argumentative visual images. The image makes a claim, and the audience often supplies any of the missing data that may or may not be there. One of the things we have to keep in mind when we think about the visual and its argumentative power is that we have to be on guard against the persuasive power of these images. We don't want to fall into a really negative trap because an image really made us angry or something along those lines. And in addition, we need to be wary of the credibility of images and remember that just because we have an image of something doesn't necessarily constitute proof. And one example of this is actually a really famous example of just how manipulated images can be. This GIF shows the process of photoshopping the image of a model. And so you can see how they elongate her arms and her legs and her neck, and they lighten her skin tone and make her eyes bigger and all of these different things. And it's just crazy to see the difference between what looks like two different women, but it's the same woman. It's just quite a bit of makeup and a little bit of Photoshop. So just because an image exists doesn't necessarily mean that what is shown in that image is true. The average Joe has access to Photoshop, and nowadays we are seeing an even more advanced form of this with deepfakes. So now not even videos are necessarily proof of something. So we just have to be really careful with the arguments that we take away from visual images.